So I saw De Pyaar recently, and after reading some reviews, it seems like the only aspect of this movie that's getting consistent praise is Tabu, which I totally agree with. Tabu can definitely act, but I noticed that few critics were really willing to credit the script. And I mean, yeah, the script definitely has its flaws, like how the therapist only had about 3 lines that he would repeat like 9 times, and how the first hour of the movie seems like it was just Ajay and Rakul flirting with each other. Overall though, I thought the movie was okay, like somewhere around 7.2.3ish out of 10. Now, despite the problems, De Pyaar still had some surprisingly thoughtful things to say about modern love that I think are worth paying attention to, especially when it comes to the challenge that some young but highly successful women have when looking for a desirable partner. Here's what I mean. By the way, I'm GIANNI, and here's a spoiler warning. So the story begins with Ashish, who's a 50-year-old divorced investment banker throwing a bachelor party for a friend, during which a stripper arrives who turns out to have been sent by the bride so that she may test her fiance's faithfulness, who definitely failed. Yet, despite getting caught, he denies that anything happened, and the entire conflict is resolved by throwing a joint bachelor and bachelorette party. Gay! Anyway, the next morning, Aisha, the stripper, wakes up in bed by herself in Ashish's apartment. Therefore, she assumes that they probably slept together too. But Ashish reveals that they didn't sleep together, which means Aisha is now really interested, and the two proceed to flirt with each other for the entire first half of the movie. Okay, so there's actually been a lot of social commentary that has been made by the movie so far, but it really didn't do a good job of making the subject of that commentary clear. So let me explain. The reason why Aisha and Ashish works as a couple is because Aisha allows Ashish to feel young again, which is important because he's been depressed since his first marriage has failed. This is even reflected later on in Tabu's character, who's also dating a younger and more cheerful person than she is. Now for Aisha, Ashish is a representation of the small percentage of men that Aisha would actually be attracted to. And this is what most of the first half of the movie is actually about. Because you see, Aisha is not representative of most women. Rather, she represents a much smaller subset of women whom are super competent, highly competitive, extremely motivated, and sexually liberated. She is really one of those feminist visions of someone living in a business metropolitan area like London. And that's how her entire backstory of working in a corporate environment while doubling as a bartender and occasionally doing some stripping is supposed to illustrate for us how much more dynamic her market value is compared to her male counterparts of the same age, whom are represented by her ex-boyfriend. So what the movie tries to do is draw attention to the fact that hyper-successful young women like Aisha often experience a certain struggle that us normies don't usually encounter, which is that the number of compatible suitors, especially ones of the same age, are drastically reduced for women like Aisha. Remember, most 25-year-old men are not working in a corporate environment, and if they are, they're definitely not in upper management, which are the more powerful and sexier positions occupied by those whom would be more mature due to their age and experience. So picture yourself as Aisha. You would naturally look for someone who can offer a sense of security and maturity that can at least match that of your own. On top of that, you would instinctively gravitate towards someone in a similar or adjacent career field, because they can more readily understand and relate to the day-to-day challenges that you experience. That's why it's only reasonable that someone like Aisha would find someone like Ashish particularly attractive. And let's not forget too that most men in their 20s are still trying to prove their ability to succeed in their career or livelihood, whereas men in their 40s and 50s, they got nothing left to prove, which you can imagine creates a staggering difference in confidence levels between older and younger men. And confidence is a trait that we are all attracted to and put a lot of weight on. So there it is. That's what most of the exposition in the first half of the movie was about, namely how younger women can date older men and not be dismissed as simply gold digging. This is as pro-women of a message as you can get out of a movie like this. Only problem is, the movie didn't do a great job of making this clear, which is why you have me. Thankfully, the second half of De Pyaar is a little better in getting its message across, although not by much. So Ashish and Aisha eventually agree to get married, and the two make plans plans to visit not just his parents, but his ex-wife and kids too. Upon arriving though, we find a couple of surprises. 1. Ashish is not actually divorced yet from Manju, they've only been separated. 2. His daughter Ishita is also planning on getting married soon, and the groom's parents are visiting the next day. And that's a problem because Ishita told her fiance that her dad passed away years ago. So the family cooks up this plan to pretend that Ashish is the uncle. Meanwhile, in this scene, it seems like Aisha and Manju start to butt heads and compete for Ashish's attention. And this is where some critics have accused this scene of being misogynistic because it's two women competing for one man. I wonder if the same critics would complain if it were two men competing for one woman. But you know what? That doesn't even matter because Aisha and Manju were not competing with each other. If these professional movie critics were really paying attention, they would have realized that yes, Aisha was competing with Manju, but she was never a threat to Manju. If anything, if you look at the way Manju talks to Aisha in this scene, it's more likely that she was testing Aisha for Ashish's sake. I mean, the difference in power and position here between the two characters was made pretty obvious. Also, during the whole Ishita wedding debacle, Manju breaks down into a vulnerable state in front of Ashish. This leads to them sleeping together and is indeed a pretty shady decision because they both have a significant other. However, I think we can reasonably cut them a little slack considering they were a married couple who had kids and presumably loved each other for a long time. The sort of bond that comes from such a relationship doesn't justify cheating, but it does make the cheating understandable. Look, I disapprove of infidelity just as much as the next person. It's a total deal breaker for me. But the fact that De Pyaar makes a despicable act understandable is a testament to pretty good storytelling, wouldn't you say? Now the next morning, Manju tells Ashish not to tell Aisha that they slept together, which you'd think is a pretty obvious thing to not tell your future wife, but don't forget, nobody knows Ashish better than Manju. They were, after all, married and had kids, so she knows Ashish's character. And this subtle gesture by the script shows that Manju is the most conscious character in this story. This is even proven later on when Ashish's dumbass confesses to Aisha anyway, which leaves it up to Manju's heroic act of self-confession to get Aisha to understand the cheating the way we did as the audience. And then finally, to further demonstrate that Manju is the character with the most power, she's the one that has to finalize the divorce papers that would allow Ashish and Aisha to get married, which is a clear symbol that she had to approve of Aisha. And that's pretty much the whole movie. It sort of ends on this cliffhanger about having to visit Aisha's family and how awkward that could be, which is obviously a setup for the sequel. Anyway, I hope I did a better job of explaining certain things better than the movie did, because man, the themes in this movie, especially in that first half, were not made clear at all. So I can't totally blame some critics for getting confused, but if a cartoon guy like me can understand a story like this, and I'm definitely not a professional movie critic, then maybe they should be spending more time paying attention. Cause like this article right here, this is like the third review that pops up when you Google De Pyaar. I had to read this article twice because I can't tell if Anna here actually watched the movie. Like, I think people like this went into the movie having already made up their mind about it. And I'm aware that Alaknath has Me Too accusations filed against him, so it was a head scratcher to see him on screen. But even if it's not a good excuse that they finished shooting before the accusations came out, that is still one blemish. So to call the entire movie misogynistic and championing male infidelity as if Tabu didn't play a real character, this girl Anna is definitely smoking something. But alright, I'm curious to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again real soon.